Hidden within the folds of ancient history lies a text that dares to reshape everything we think we know about the beginning of time. The Book of Jubilees, often called the Lesser Genesis, retells the story of creation, the flood, and the lives of the patriarchs with astonishing precision, revealing a timeline unlike anything found in the Book of Genesis. It is a work that blends mystery, revelation, and cosmic order into one sweeping vision of divine history. For centuries, it remained lost, its voice silenced, its pages hidden, until fragments were uncovered among the Dead Sea Scrolls, reigniting a fascination that continues to this day. This rediscovery challenges not only scholars, but anyone seeking to understand how ancient believers viewed time, law, and divine purpose. Unlike Genesis, where events unfold in narrative flow, Jubilees presents a world structured by mathematical perfection. Every event is carefully measured within cycles of 7 and 50, every generation recorded according to heavenly calculation. Time becomes sacred architecture rather than mere chronology. Its 364-day solar calendar governs creation itself, ensuring that seasons, Sabbaths, and festivals never drift. Such precision reveals a deeper purpose: to align humanity with the unchanging rhythm of heaven. Within these patterns, the author proclaims that divine order was not lost after Eden. It has always been there, waiting for humanity to remember. Written in the turbulent centuries before the birth of Christ, this book emerged in an age of spiritual tension. Empires rose and fell, temples were desecrated, faith communities divided over law and purity. Amid that uncertainty, the author of Jubilees sought to restore what had been forgotten, to remind Israel that divine truth is not subject to human adjustment. Every commandment, every covenant, every moment in history followed a plan established before the world began. This belief gave comfort to those who longed for stability and holiness in a world that seemed to drift further from its divine origin. Its narrative begins with Moses on Mount Sinai, listening to an angel who recounts the entire history of humanity from Adam to his own time. What Moses receives is not new revelation, but the original record written on heavenly tablets long before creation itself. That revelation reveals how the universe operates in harmony with divine law, how every life, every nation, and every event unfolds according to sacred timing. Through this vision, Jubilees transforms the familiar stories of Genesis into a cosmic chronicle, portraying history as a reflection of heavenly design rather than a sequence of chance events. Discovery of this forgotten book among the Dead Sea Scrolls astonished scholars and believers alike. Its presence among those sacred writings suggested that it once held authority for entire communities who believed it preserved the purest form of divine truth. Its message spoke to them across centuries, that time itself is holy, that law existed before Moses, and that creation continues to move according to divine intention. Whether one views it as scripture, revelation, or ancient imagination, Jubilees remains a key to understanding how faith once intertwined with the very structure of the cosmos. If exploring lost books and ancient mysteries captivates you, stay connected for more. Subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next episode, diving deeper into sacred history. Leave a like if you enjoy uncovering hidden truths of faith. And share your thoughts in the comments below, because every insight you add helps keep this journey of discovery alive. Time, within the Book of Jubilees, is not a background concept, but the living heartbeat of creation. Every moment, every day, and every year follows a structure that reflects divine perfection. The author does not treat time as something flexible or subject to human adjustment. Instead, it stands as a reflection of heavenly order, unchanging and absolute. The solar year of 364 days, composed of exactly 52 weeks, eliminates all irregularity. Every season begins on the same weekday. Every festival repeats with unwavering precision. and every Sabbath aligns seamlessly with the one before it. This calendar, unlike the lunar solar system used by Israel during the Second Temple period, maintains balance between heaven and earth. Its cycles do not drift or require correction. To its writers, this was more than mathematics. It was sacred design, proof that creation itself moved according to divine rhythm. Within ancient Israel, debates over timekeeping were far from trivial. Calendar disputes determined when to celebrate holy days, when to fast, and how to mark agricultural and religious cycles. The system found in Jubilees presents a theological declaration rather than a mere alternative calculation. It insists that God's appointed times had been corrupted when humanity began to rely on the moon rather than the sun. The author calls the lunar system deceptive because its shifting months distort sacred observances, causing people to miss appointed feasts. A solar structure, on the other hand, reflects stability, mirroring the immutable nature of the Creator. The purpose behind this insistence was not only chronological accuracy, but spiritual alignment. Observing sacred days at the correct times symbolized harmony with divine intention, while deviation represented disobedience. Conflict between lunar and solar systems created sharp divisions within ancient Jewish communities. Groups like the Essenes at Qumran aligned themselves with the solar model, using Jubilees as a foundation for their calendar. To them, adherence to this fixed year represented purity of worship. Temple authorities in Jerusalem, however, continued to follow a lunar solar calendar that adjusted months through observation of the moon's cycle. That difference may appear small from a modern viewpoint, yet it divided the faithful. Each calendar defined its followers' understanding of covenantal truth. For those who revered Jubilees, correct reckoning of time meant obedience to divine revelation rather than submission to institutional authority. Hidden beneath the surface of this dispute lies a deeper question about divine communication. If creation was established with a precise structure of days and seasons, then losing that order signified a spiritual fall. The Book of Jubilees interprets calendar correction as an act of restoration, a return to the original pattern before human miscalculation disrupted divine harmony. When the sun and stars were placed in the heavens, their purpose was to measure appointed times. Every feast, festival, and Sabbath reflected the movement of those celestial bodies. To return to that rhythm meant rediscovering creation's purity. Observing time wrongly implied not just error, but rebellion, a rejection of divine symmetry embedded within the cosmos. Ritual life depended heavily on this perfect calendar. Passover, the Festival of Weeks, and the Feast of Booths could only fulfill their sacred meaning when celebrated on the proper days. According to Jubilees, Moses was instructed on Mount Sinai not only about laws, but about the true measurement of time. His responsibility included teaching Israel to live by this heavenly structure so that generations would remain aligned with divine will. This sacred chronology connected the rhythm of worship to cosmic order. Failing to maintain it meant breaking the chain that united heaven and earth. The festivals were more than memorials. They were cosmic appointments, moments when divine and human time met in harmony. The structure of 50 Jubilees within 49-year cycles symbolizes an eternal repetition that never decays. History becomes an unfolding pattern of sacred weeks, mirroring the 7 days of creation. Every 7th year represents release, every 50th marks renewal. This rhythm transforms time into theology. It means that history itself is not random or chaotic, but bound to divine justice and mercy. Just as creation rested on the 7th day, humanity must rest within the flow of divine cycles. Each generation inherits its appointed role within those intervals, revealing a moral order built into the passage of years. Scholars studying the text notice that this calendar was not a mere innovation, but a reflection of priestly idealism. Priests responsible for temple rituals sought a system that maintained eternal order without dependence on observation or adjustment. By establishing a 364-day year, they ensured unbroken symmetry, a concept that mirrored their vision of God's perfection. The use of weeks and jubilees simplified the structure of history, turning it into a living liturgy. Through this mathematical purity, the book reflects a desire to see human life ordered according to celestial wisdom. Time itself becomes a form of worship, and living within its bounds becomes an act of faith. The calendar controversy also shaped broader theological debates about revelation. For followers of the traditional lunar solar system, flexibility symbolized divine compassion, allowing human priests to observe and correct errors. For the adherents of Jubilees, flexibility meant corruption. The Creator's design required no correction. Each side saw its interpretation as faithful to God's will. This disagreement reveals how deeply ancient people associated time with holiness. It was not simply a tool for marking days, but a sacred covenantal structure that defined relationship with the divine. Losing control of time meant losing alignment with creation itself. Many researchers interpret this solar calendar as evidence of a reformist movement within Judaism. Its creators sought to restore what they believed to be an ancient and divinely revealed order that predated Moses. By tying chronology to creation, Jubilees positioned time as the foundation of law and morality. Human disobedience was not limited to moral failure, but extended to cosmic disarray. Observing incorrect festivals or calculating months by the moon became acts of spiritual distortion. This connection between time and ethics explains why the book speaks so passionately about its calendar. Keeping the true year preserved the covenant. Breaking it violated the rhythm of divine purpose. Through the solar calendar, the Book of Jubilees offers a vision where divine truth and natural order converge. The rising and setting of the sun mark not just the passage of days, but the unfolding of sacred history. Time moves forward in perfect cycles, untouched by human error. Each jubilee completes its pattern, and each generation steps into the next phase of divine revelation. For its authors, this structure was not human invention, but restoration of the world's original harmony. By aligning themselves with that pattern, they believed they were aligning with the Creator's own mind, entering into a covenant measured not by stone tablets alone, but by the turning of the heavens. Beyond its fascination with time, the Book of Jubilees opens the heavens themselves, revealing a world where divine beings govern creation under the direction of the Most High. The author presents reality as a reflection of celestial administration, with angels serving as custodians of history, law, and destiny. Moses, upon ascending Mount Sinai, receives more than commandments. According to this text, he listens to the angel of the presence, who unveils the secret records of the universe, heavenly tablets inscribed with every event from creation to the future restoration of the world. These records demonstrate that all of history unfolds under divine supervision, every action already written before it occurs. Human life in this vision participates in an order far greater than earthly awareness. Celestial beings in Jubilees are not distant abstractions, but active participants in creation's unfolding. Different orders of angels govern different aspects of existence. Guardians oversee nations, others preside over elements, seasons, or human morality. Some serve directly before God, delivering revelation to chosen individuals, while others maintain the harmony of creation cycles. This intricate system mirrors the structure of the solar calendar itself, emphasizing symmetry and purpose. Angels act as instruments of divine will, ensuring that the universe moves according to the sacred pattern inscribed upon those heavenly tablets. Moses' encounter with the angel of the presence reveals how deeply the author of Jubilees views revelation as participation in cosmic truth. Instead of merely receiving laws for Israel's conduct, Moses learns the divine blueprint that shaped the cosmos. The angel explains that everything recorded in human scripture corresponds to what already exists in heaven. The implication is that scripture itself is not new revelation, but earthly transcription of what has always been written above. Humanity does not create sacred law, but discovers what has existed since before time began. These heavenly tablets, central to the book's theology, represent both destiny and judgment. Every generation's deeds are already inscribed. The righteous are recorded for life, while the wicked stand condemned before they act. This concept may appear fatalistic, yet it carries moral weight rather than resignation. The awareness that one's actions are written in heaven instills accountability. Human freedom exists within divine foreknowledge, and righteousness consists of living in accordance with the preordained order rather than resisting it. The tablets serve as both record and reminder that no deed escapes divine notice. The angelic world described in Jubilees is one of hierarchy and purpose. Angels do not function as independent spirits, but as agents who sustain the moral and cosmic fabric of existence. They carry prayers, guard individuals, and oversee covenantal promises. Each one holds a role corresponding to creation's structure. When humans disrupt divine order through sin or ignorance, angels act to restore balance. This image transforms the relationship between heaven and earth into a dynamic cooperation. Divine justice operates not through random intervention, but through an organized celestial system. Revelation in Jubilees bridges heaven and earth in an almost seamless connection. Moses' experience exemplifies how divine truth moves from the heavenly realm into human history. The angel's narrative teaches that every law, every festival, and every covenant reflects the eternal pattern above. Nothing originates in human culture. Everything descends from divine order. This concept gives sacred authority to the entire structure of life, from family relationships to national identity. Obedience becomes more than submission. It becomes participation in the very rhythm of heaven. This portrayal of angels offers insight into how early Jewish thought understood mediation between humanity and God. The transcendent creator communicates through beings who embody divine attributes, mercy, justice, wisdom. They ensure that revelation remains pure as it passes from the eternal realm into temporal experience. Moses serves as the recipient, but not the originator of this wisdom. By presenting revelation in this way, Jubilees emphasizes the continuity between heaven and earth, suggesting that divine instruction has always existed and only becomes visible when humanity is ready to receive it. The imagery of the heavenly tablets also reinforces the book's view of time. Each era unfolds according to what has already been written. Creation, flood, covenant, and deliverance form chapters in a cosmic script preordained from the beginning. The appearance of new laws does not mark divine change, but renewed human awareness of eternal truth. Even moral instruction follows celestial precedent. Angels themselves observe Sabbath, purity, and praise, serving as models for human obedience. When Moses receives the law, he is entering into a pattern practiced in heaven since creation. This celestial dimension transforms faith from mere belief into cosmic participation. Humanity becomes aware that every action resonates across dimensions, echoing in the courts of heaven. Keeping the covenant aligns one's life with the rhythm of the angels. Disobedience disrupts the harmony of creation. The moral universe described in Jubilees is not symbolic, but literal. Each human act contributes to the balance or imbalance of the cosmos. Revelation through angels and heavenly tablets binds the physical world to spiritual reality in one continuous chain of divine purpose. Moses, as portrayed in Jubilees, returns from Sinai carrying more than stone tablets. He bears knowledge of the structure of the universe itself. The angel's words reveal a sacred architecture where time, morality, and history interlock as parts of one divine pattern. This vision reshapes the meaning of covenantal law, turning obedience into alignment with eternal design. Humanity's story becomes the unfolding of what heaven has already recorded, and the angels stand as witnesses to that sacred continuity that stretches from creation's dawn into the endless future. Long before the flood reshaped the earth, the Book of Jubilees paints a portrait of early humanity marked by structure and purpose rather than chaos. Adam and Eve's story expands far beyond the brief account found in Genesis. Their children are named in detail, their years precisely recorded, and their relationships woven into an ordered chronology that mirrors the book's obsession with divine timing. Humanity does not emerge in confusion, but within a moral framework established from the beginning. The first family lives under divine instruction, practicing purity and observing laws that anticipate the later commandments given to Moses. The world before the flood is not lawless. It already reflects a covenantal pattern that humanity would later rediscover at Sinai. According to this retelling, Adam and Eve live within a measured rhythm of years, celebrating the first Sabbath and teaching their descendants to honor creation's cycles. The idea of rest, holiness, and separation originates not at Sinai, but at Eden. Every detail serves to demonstrate that divine order existed from the start. Cain and Abel's story, too, acquires new depth. Their offerings are presented according to appointed times, suggesting that worship itself followed sacred scheduling. Cain's failure becomes not only an act of jealousy, but a disruption of divine timing, a moral offense against the harmony of creation. Details absent in Genesis appear vividly within this narrative. The names of Adam's daughters, the timing of Cain's marriage, and the births of later generations unfold within carefully measured intervals. Humanity's early generations are portrayed not as primitive wanderers, but as participants in divine structure. They build altars, offer sacrifices, and distinguish between clean and unclean animals. Every act echoes the heavenly order revealed to Moses on Sinai. By inserting these laws into the pre-flood world, the Book of Jubilees asserts that divine instruction is eternal, not bound to historical events, but inherent in creation itself. Moral decline leading to the flood arises not from ignorance, but rebellion. Humanity possesses knowledge of purity and righteousness, yet chooses corruption. Violence, idolatry, and immorality grow when people reject the divine laws known since Adam's time. This portrayal intensifies the tragedy of the flood. Destruction comes not upon the uninformed, but upon those who consciously abandon divine order. The flood becomes a reset of creation, restoring balance between heaven and earth after generations of moral distortion. The punishment is not arbitrary judgment, but restoration of cosmic symmetry. Every generation between Adam and Noah receives careful attention. The book lists lifespans, birth years, and covenantal events with mathematical precision, forming a continuous chain that links creation to the flood. These details transform ancient genealogy into theology. Time itself becomes sacred narrative, showing that divine oversight never wavered. Even when humanity turned to wickedness, the passage of years remained measured within the unbroken structure of Jubilees. Sin could disrupt morality, but never the divine framework of time. Laws of purity appear early within this retelling. Human beings distinguish between acceptable offerings and forbidden unions, between holy and profane behavior. The principle of separation, central to later Mosaic law, already governs humanity's earliest days. Jubilees presents Adam and his descendants as the first priests of creation, mediating between God and the earth. Their disobedience does not erase this role, but corrupts it, creating the need for renewed covenant through Noah and later through Abraham. In this way, moral history unfolds as a series of restorations rather than inventions. The account of Enoch's righteousness bridges heaven and earth during this era. His closeness to God represents the ideal harmony humanity once knew. Jubilees expands his story, describing him as the first to learn the order of time and the secrets of the heavens. Through him, divine wisdom re-enters human history. Enoch's writings preserve the knowledge of the heavenly tablets, preparing the world for judgment and redemption. By connecting Enoch's vision to Adam's lineage, the book shows continuity of revelation from the first generation to the flood's survivors. Corruption spreads through forbidden unions and moral decay, yet even this darkness unfolds according to divine chronology. The violence that fills the earth before the flood is timed within the Jubilee structure, emphasizing that divine oversight remains even in human rebellion. The flood does not mark divine abandonment, but the completion of a cycle of judgment written long before it occurred. When waters rise and the earth is cleansed, creation reverts to its original state of purity, ready to begin anew within the same ordered framework. Jubilees transforms the familiar image of the pre-flood world into a stage for divine law. Humanity's earliest generations live under commandments, practice worship, and recognize moral boundaries. Their fall results not from ignorance, but from willful defiance of a structure that had always been known. This vision turns the flood narrative into a cosmic correction, a return to the rhythm of creation that humanity had broken. Through its precise dates, names, and intervals, the book weaves theology into chronology, showing that from Eden to the flood, divine order never ceased to govern existence. Among the earliest generations that walked upon the earth, one man stands apart as a bridge between the human and the divine. Enoch, seventh from Adam, is portrayed in the Book of Jubilees not merely as a righteous individual, but as the first scribe of sacred truth, the one who received and recorded heavenly wisdom. His life represents the restoration of divine order within a world slipping toward corruption. While Genesis mentions him briefly, stating that he walked with God, Jubilees expands this image into a sweeping revelation of cosmic instruction. Enoch becomes the mediator through whom humanity learns the hidden structure of creation, the cycles of years, the courses of the heavenly bodies, and the moral law that governs both angels and men. Through him, the book constructs a vision of revelation that predates Sinai and establishes that divine instruction is timeless, inscribed upon the heavens long before it was written on tablets of stone. His role as scribe transforms him into a participant in the divine council. He records the deeds of humanity, interprets the movements of the stars, and communicates messages between heaven and earth. Within this expanded narrative, Enoch is not simply favored by God, but entrusted with maintaining cosmic balance. His writings preserve the order of creation and the boundaries that separate holy from unholy, human from angelic. By walking with God, he does not merely accompany the divine, but learns to move in step with the rhythm of the universe. Jubilees presents him as the prototype of prophetic wisdom, the origin of revelation itself. His understanding of time mirrors the book's calendar structure, suggesting that true righteousness flows from knowing and respecting the divine pattern that governs all things. Enoch's revelation includes knowledge of celestial beings known as the Watchers, angels appointed to oversee humanity. According to Jubilees, their descent to earth marks one of the great disruptions in sacred history. Sent to guide and instruct humankind, these Watchers abandon their appointed roles and become entangled with mortal women, producing a generation of giants whose violence fills the earth. This rebellion introduces forbidden knowledge, arts of warfare, enchantments, and manipulations of creation that defy divine boundaries. The corruption spreads rapidly, distorting both the natural and spiritual order. What began as a mission of guidance turns into contamination, leading to chaos that threatens to undo the harmony of creation itself. The Watcher's defiance represents more than moral failure. It signifies the breakdown of cosmic structure. By uniting heaven and earth through disobedience, they erase the distinction that God established between spiritual and material realms. Jubilees interprets this event as the origin of human wickedness that culminates in the flood. The violence of the giants, the arrogance of rulers, and the spread of idolatry all stem from that single act of rebellion. Enoch's task becomes one of intercession and record-keeping. He writes petitions on behalf of the fallen angels, but their pleas are rejected. Judgment is sealed upon them, and their offspring are destined for destruction. Through Enoch's writings, divine justice is articulated in exact terms, showing that no transgression escapes the order inscribed upon the heavenly tablets. Descriptions of the Watcher's punishment reveal how closely divine law is tied to cosmic structure. Chains, darkness, and confinement beneath the earth reflect not arbitrary retribution, but restoration of balance. Just as the flood will later cleanse the world of corruption, the imprisonment of the Watchers restores separation between realms. Enoch's visions show that justice operates through correction rather than vengeance. Every being, angelic or human, exists within assigned boundaries, and crossing them destabilizes creation. Jubilees presents these events with solemn precision, turning mythic imagery into theological principle. Divine order cannot coexist with transgression. Knowledge granted by the Watchers carries a sense of seductive power. They teach humanity how to forge weapons, read omens, and manipulate creation for personal gain. These forbidden arts symbolize the misuse of wisdom, detached from reverence. In Jubilees, wisdom is meant to lead to obedience. Knowledge without holiness leads to decay. The author warns that human pursuit of divine secrets, apart from moral discipline, brings ruin. The pre-flood world becomes a mirror of this corruption. Brilliant yet violent, intelligent yet faithless. The narrative transforms intellectual pride into a spiritual disease, one that still echoes in every generation's temptation to master creation rather than serve within its divine design. Enoch's writings stand as a counterpoint to the perverted teachings of the Watchers. He records truth not to control creation, but to preserve it. His scrolls become repositories of divine law, read by his descendants and remembered by Noah, ensuring that sacred wisdom survives through the flood. Jubilees positions Enoch as a transmitter of pre-Sinaitic revelation, demonstrating continuity of divine instruction through the ages. His journey into heaven symbolizes the elevation of faithful humanity into the realm of eternal knowledge, where understanding and obedience are united. Through his example, the book defines righteousness as alignment with the order written in heaven, rather than mastery of the secrets that belong to God alone. Interpretations of the Enoch narrative reveal how Jubilees integrates multiple streams of ancient tradition into a coherent theology. The fusion of heavenly rebellion, human corruption, and divine judgment becomes a lesson in boundaries and purpose. Angels who forget their station mirror, humans who defy their calling. Both cause disruption within creation's structure. Restoration requires acknowledgement of those limits and submission to divine order. In this way, the story of Enoch and the Watchers transcends myth and becomes moral theology, teaching that cosmic peace depends on respect for the distinctions God established at the beginning. By ending Enoch's earthly life with ascension rather than death, Jubilees elevates him as an enduring witness of divine faithfulness. His presence among the heavenly beings affirms that obedience leads to eternal communion with God. The Watcher's imprisonment contrasts sharply with his exaltation, forming a moral polarity that defines the narrative's entire message. Through this contrast, the book demonstrates that holiness preserves creation, while rebellion destroys it. Enoch's journey marks a turning point in sacred history, the moment when revelation confronts corruption and divine wisdom begins to prepare the world for judgment and renewal. Rising waters in the Book of Jubilees do not merely symbolize destruction, but the recalibration of creation itself. The narrative of Noah unfolds with a level of precision absent from Genesis, every date and event carefully measured within the solar calendar. The flood begins in the second month, on a day fixed within the pattern of weeks and jubilees. Each phase, rising waters, resting of the ark and drying of the land, follows predetermined intervals that reflect divine symmetry. The author's concern is not only to recount a historical event, but to reveal that judgment and renewal occur according to an exact heavenly schedule. Time becomes the language of divine justice, and Noah's role emerges as both witness and participant in a cosmic restoration. Before the flood descends, Noah receives instruction from angels regarding purity, sacrifice, and the preservation of creation's order. He's told how to separate clean from unclean animals and to maintain the boundaries that sin had blurred. His obedience contrasts with the lawlessness of his generation, marking him as a priestly figure who mediates between God and the earth. Jubilees portrays him not as a mere survivor, but as custodian of divine law, chosen to preserve both physical life and spiritual truth. Through him, continuity between pre-flood righteousness and post-flood covenant remains unbroken. The flood becomes less a catastrophe and more an act of purification, erasing corruption while safeguarding holiness. Chronology in Jubilees transforms the flood into a cosmic cycle of judgment and rebirth. Every stage corresponds to specific days of the solar year, ensuring that divine timing governs even the elements. The waters rise and subside according to heavenly calculation, reflecting perfect symmetry between judgment and mercy. When the ark rests upon the mountains, it does so on an appointed day that foreshadows later festivals of deliverance. Each moment resonates with theological meaning. Divine wrath operates within divine order. The Creator does not act in chaos, but restores creation with mathematical precision. After the waters withdraw, Noah builds an altar and offers sacrifices from the clean animals he preserved. This act establishes a new covenant that reflects the structure of divine law already embedded within creation. Jubilees emphasizes that Noah's offering follows a specific festival pattern, aligning with the same calendar later given to Moses. By doing so, the book connects the earliest covenant with the later revelation at Sinai, reinforcing its claim that sacred law existed from the beginning. Noah's worship marks the re-establishment of cosmic order, linking humanity once again with the heavenly rhythm of time and holiness. Divine promises to Noah carry profound moral implications. The rainbow, mentioned briefly in Genesis, becomes in Jubilees a permanent sign of cosmic equilibrium. It symbolizes the covenant of stability between heaven and earth, an assurance that divine order will not again be undone by universal destruction. Yet this covenant also contains obligations. Humanity is instructed to abstain from blood, to respect life, and to maintain purity. These laws anticipate later commandments given to Israel, suggesting that moral structure predates any national revelation. The flood, therefore, becomes both an end and a beginning, a moment where divine justice and mercy converge within the same eternal plan. Noah's family assumes priestly roles, offering sacrifices and observing festivals that prefigure the Mosaic system. Jubilees details these celebrations with remarkable precision, identifying the days and months on which they occur. The narrative insists that the first offerings after the flood set the precedent for all future worship. By tying ritual to calendar, the book reinforces its theme of order. Every sacred act occurs within an appointed time, restoring harmony between human behavior and divine law. Noah's covenant becomes a renewal of creation's design, demonstrating that holiness governs not only moral choices, but temporal rhythm. The post-flood world emerges as a purified landscape where humanity begins anew under divine supervision. Jubilees presents Noah as both patriarch and lawgiver, transmitting divine instruction to his descendants. He teaches his sons to observe appointed times and to maintain separation from idolatry. His role mirrors that of Moses, suggesting a continuity of revelation through chosen mediators. The flood thus serves as the midpoint of sacred history, bridging the era of primordial corruption and the age of covenantal order. By re-establishing law within the structure of time, the book portrays creation as once again synchronized with heaven. Interpretations of this rewritten flood narrative reveal its deeper theological message. Judgment is not an interruption of divine mercy, but its expression. Cleansing allows renewal, and destruction makes room for restored harmony. Every event unfolds within measured intervals, underscoring that even catastrophe obeys the divine calendar. Noah's covenant guarantees that time will never again descend into chaos. Seasons, festivals, and cycles continue according to heavenly design. Humanity's duty is to live within that order, remembering that disobedience brought the flood and obedience preserves creation. The flood's conclusion in Jubilees extends beyond physical survival to the establishment of moral permanence. Noah's descendants inherit a structured world where divine law is already active. History does not restart from emptiness, but resumes within the framework of prior revelation. By presenting the flood as a recalibration rather than a new creation, the book maintains continuity between Adam's world and the covenant of Israel. The same divine pattern governs both, uniting them within one unbroken timeline of holiness and purpose. Through its meticulous chronology and theological symmetry, the Book of Jubilees transforms the flood into a testimony of cosmic precision. Judgment and mercy operate as twin forces sustaining creation. Noah's righteousness, measured within that structure, represents humanity's capacity to restore divine harmony through obedience. The waters that once destroyed become symbols of purification, and the covenant that follows reaffirms that divine order is eternal. Every year, every season, and every act of worship henceforth echoes the memory of that restoration when time itself was set back into balance with the Creator's design. Long after the flood's renewal, the story of divine purpose continues through a man whose life embodies faith, obedience, and destiny. Abraham's journey, as described in the Book of Jubilees, unfolds within a framework of exact chronology that charts every event from his birth to his covenant with God. His existence is not accidental, but part of a predetermined sequence within the heavenly tablets. From the moment he appears, the narrative emphasizes precision, dates, ages, and jubilees, linking his life to the same divine pattern that guided creation and the flood. Through Abraham, the eternal covenant becomes personal, and divine order manifests through human faithfulness. His early years reveal a mind already set apart from the idolatry that surrounded him. Raised in a household devoted to false gods, he begins to question the validity of idols. Observing the sun, moon, and stars, he concludes that none of them hold ultimate power, for each one rises and sets under a higher authority. This rational pursuit of truth leads him toward recognition of the one Creator who governs all things. Jubilees portrays his discovery as an intellectual and spiritual awakening, demonstrating that divine revelation can arise through reflection upon creation itself. Abraham's rejection of idols marks the rebirth of monotheistic faith in a world again drifting toward confusion. His destruction of his father's idols, described with striking clarity, becomes a symbolic act of purification. Fire consumes the false images, signifying the triumph of truth over deception. That defiance brings danger, forcing Abraham to flee his homeland under divine guidance. This departure mirrors the Exodus motif that will later define Israel's identity. By abandoning the house of idolatry, he becomes the prototype of obedience through separation. His journey from Ur to Haran and later to Canaan follows specific dates and intervals, underscoring that his path is not random wandering, but movement along a timeline inscribed in heaven. Covenantal encounters punctuate his life with deliberate timing. God's promises to bless his descendants, grant them a land, and establish an everlasting covenant occur within exact years recorded by Jubilees. The author connects these moments to festival dates that correspond to later observances in Israel's calendar, suggesting that Abraham's life prefigures national worship. Each revelation coincides with sacred seasons, reinforcing the belief that divine interaction with humanity follows appointed times. This precision turns biography into theology, proving that destiny unfolds within the structure of divine order rather than human chance. Sarah's role receives notable expansion in this retelling. She embodies faith and strength, her barrenness serving not as punishment but as divine preparation. When she conceives Isaac, the timing aligns with celestial calculation, marking fulfillment of promise within the same solar system that governs all creation. Her laughter, often interpreted as doubt, becomes in Jubilees a moment of divine joy, confirmation that heavenly order prevails even when human logic fails. The birth of Isaac restores balance to the covenantal line, ensuring that the chosen lineage continues through a child born at the appointed time. Hagar and Ishmael also occupy precise positions within this divine timeline. Their story reflects moral and spiritual contrast rather than simple conflict. Jubilees treats Hagar with measured compassion, recognizing her suffering while maintaining the distinctness of Isaac's covenantal role. Ishmael's destiny, though separate from the chosen line, remains guided by divine oversight. The text carefully records his birth and departure within specific years, illustrating that even those outside the central covenant exist under divine scheduling. History unfolds with inclusiveness and order, every life woven into the larger tapestry of divine purpose. Abraham's trials, including the command to sacrifice Isaac, gain deeper meaning when placed within this structured chronology. The event does not occur randomly, but at a preordained moment, reflecting cosmic testing. The mountain where it happens becomes a geographical and spiritual intersection between heaven and earth. Jubilees underscores that Abraham's obedience restores the harmony that Adam disrupted. By submitting to divine will, he aligns human action once again with the order written in heaven. The covenant renewed after this event solidifies his position as father of nations and model of faithfulness. His interactions with surrounding peoples emphasize separation and purity. He refuses alliances that compromise moral or religious integrity. Every encounter, from his dealings with kings to his burial of Sarah, unfolds according to recorded years, preserving historical accuracy within divine symmetry. Jubilees uses these details to show that Abraham's faith is both personal devotion and participation in cosmic design. His life operates as a living calendar, marking the unfolding of God's promises through time. Each act of obedience corresponds to divine milestones that advance the plan of redemption. Abraham's final years carry the serenity of fulfillment. He instructs his sons in righteousness, teaches them to observe festivals, and reminds them of the covenant's permanence. His death, dated precisely within the book's Jubilee structure, signifies the completion of a divinely appointed cycle. Through his lineage, the chosen line continues unbroken, linking creation's order to the emergence of Israel. The Book of Jubilees presents him not merely as ancestor, but as embodiment of covenantal harmony, a man whose faith synchronized human life with the rhythm of heaven. By expanding his narrative through detailed chronology and moral reflection, Jubilees transforms Abraham from patriarch into cosmic figure. His journey becomes a pattern for all generations, demonstrating that divine purpose moves through time with perfect coordination. Every act of obedience realigns creation with its source, and every promise fulfilled confirms that history is guided by celestial design. Through Abraham's destiny, the book reveals its central conviction that faith, time, and law form one inseparable harmony written across the ages, linking the first dawn of creation to every covenant that would follow. Long before Moses climbed Mount Sinai, the Book of Jubilees insists that divine commandments already governed the world. Law did not appear as a sudden revelation, but existed as an eternal principle woven into creation itself. Every cycle of time, every festival, and every act of righteousness performed by the patriarchs reflects that original Torah which shaped heaven and earth. According to this vision, holiness is not an innovation of history, but a restoration of what was always known. From Adam to Abraham, humanity received glimpses of divine instruction through conscience, revelation, and ritual, revealing that moral order is not a product of human progress, but the foundation of existence. Righteous figures before Sinai lived within that hidden law. Noah distinguished between clean and unclean animals long before those categories were recorded in Scripture. He offered sacrifices following specific days aligned with heavenly calendars, mirroring practices later codified in the Mosaic covenant. Abraham observed tithes, circumcision, and feast days centuries before the Exodus. Jacob practiced purity, marital fidelity, and the offering of first fruits. Each act demonstrates continuity rather than innovation. According to Jubilees, divine expectations never changed. They simply became visible again when Moses received them in written form. The Torah was eternal, and the patriarchs lived as its keepers before it descended in fire on Sinai. Purity in this pre-Sinaitic world extends beyond ritual cleanliness to the moral structure of daily life. Marriages follow divine boundaries, dietary practices reflect holiness, and social interactions embody compassion and justice. These virtues, taught through revelation and inherited tradition, keep humanity aligned with divine will. The idea that holiness predated the Mosaic covenant transforms the meaning of law itself. Rather than viewing commandments as burdens imposed on humanity, Jubilees presents them as reflections of humanity's true nature, patterns through which life flourishes in harmony with creation. Festivals within Jubilees demonstrate how deeply the author believed time itself expressed divine law. Abraham celebrated the Feast of Weeks after defeating kings and offering 1/10 of his spoils to the priest of the Most High. Isaac honored new harvests through offerings that matched future Israelite festivals. Even Jacob, during his journeys, established altars and performed sacrifices at intervals that align perfectly with later observances. These stories suggest that holy times were known instinctively through divine guidance, later confirmed through Moses. Sacred time existed before human calendars, its rhythm embedded in the cosmic order. Ethical teachings within this framework highlight how divine wisdom guided humanity even when revelation appeared incomplete. Justice, mercy, and faithfulness function as eternal attributes rather than historical developments. Jubilees portrays each patriarch as living under an unwritten Torah, their righteousness proof that divine law is inherent in creation. Sin, therefore, becomes rebellion against natural holiness rather than ignorance of divine will. This idea intensifies moral accountability. Humanity cannot claim innocence through lack of revelation because the structure of righteousness is visible in the very design of the universe. Angels play a vital role in transmitting these eternal commandments. Acting as heavenly teachers, they reveal to patriarchs how to maintain purity and worship according to divine order. When Abraham learns about circumcision, an angel confirms it as an everlasting sign already written on the heavenly tablets. When Jacob builds an altar, angels affirm that his offering aligns with divine will. Such interactions prove that revelation was ongoing long before the giving of the law, ensuring that the righteous never lacked instruction. The relationship between heaven and earth remains unbroken, sustained through these messengers who preserve divine continuity. Viewing Torah as eternal reshapes the meaning of covenant. Instead of being a contract limited to one nation or time, it becomes the expression of divine relationship with all creation. The patriarch's obedience symbolizes humanity's original calling to live according to heavenly order. Their actions anticipate later commandments, not by coincidence, but by design. Every gesture of worship, every ethical decision, and every observance of sacred time reflects the same truth, that God's law is not imposed from outside, but emanates from within creation's very fabric. Jubilees also uses this concept to bridge continuity between heaven and history. When Moses receives the tablets on Sinai, he does not introduce new principles, but restores those already known to the righteous. His revelation renews awareness of cosmic law that had been partially forgotten. The commandments written on stone mirror the inscriptions on heavenly tablets, uniting temporal and eternal realms. This view dignifies human participation in divine order, portraying obedience not as submission to authority, but as cooperation with creation's original harmony. By portraying law as pre-existent, the author of Jubilees removes the distinction between moral revelation and cosmic structure. Law becomes the pulse of creation itself, and living within it means living in alignment with the rhythm of the universe. Every righteous act reconnects humanity to the divine pattern, while disobedience fractures that connection. Through this theology, Jubilees elevates ordinary actions, harvest, marriage, prayer, into participation in sacred order. Torah becomes not a burden, but a reflection of life as it was meant to be from the beginning. Through its portrayal of pre-Sinaitic law, the Book of Jubilees transforms history into revelation. Every generation renews divine wisdom. Every patriarch reenacts Sinai in miniature. From Adam's worship to Jacob's vows, the same commandments pulse through human experience. Law is not a set of rules given once, but an eternal current flowing through creation, sustaining its beauty and balance. In this vision, obedience becomes more than duty. It becomes remembrance, the act of living in rhythm with the will that shaped the stars. Boundaries within the Book of Jubilees define the fabric of existence. Creation itself begins through separation. Light from darkness, water from land, day from night. That pattern of distinction continues throughout the book as the measure of holiness. Every division reflects divine wisdom, ensuring that chaos does not consume order. Time has boundaries through Sabbaths and festivals. Space has them through sacred lands and altars. Humanity has them through purity laws and covenantal identity. To live within these limits means to live in peace with divine design. To cross them means to disrupt harmony and invite disorder into creation. Holiness in this worldview depends not merely on personal virtue, but on respecting these boundaries. Animals, foods, relationships, and even conversations possess moral dimensions depending on their alignment with divine order. Clean and unclean distinctions teach discernment. Moral purity mirrors cosmic separation. By keeping these lines clear, humanity participates in the same act of creation that began at the dawn of time. Every Sabbath observance, every dietary choice, every act of restraint becomes a reenactment of divine separation between order and chaos. Geographical boundaries hold equal significance. Lands are appointed to nations according to divine decision recorded on heavenly tablets. Israel's territory stands apart as sacred inheritance, reflecting not political ambition, but theological destiny. Jubilees describes how God assigns regions to Noah's sons after the flood, defining where each nation may dwell. Trespassing beyond these limits invites conflict and moral corruption. Respecting territorial boundaries is an act of reverence, acknowledging divine sovereignty over the earth. Geography becomes theology, mapping holiness across creation. Moral and social boundaries shape community life. Marriage, family, and inheritance follow precise laws intended to maintain purity within the chosen line. Intermarriage with idolaters, exploitation of others, and injustice toward the weak violate cosmic balance. By maintaining social boundaries, Israel preserves the divine image within human relationships. Jubilees connects these structures to the order observed by angels, suggesting that holiness mirrors heavenly society, where every being fulfills its appointed role without confusion or rivalry. Purity also governs time, not just behavior. Sabbaths, jubilees, and festivals divide history into sacred segments, each carrying spiritual weight. Working, resting, planting, and harvesting occur in designated rhythms. Violating those rhythms breaks the harmony of creation itself. Time becomes a moral landscape, and those who honor its boundaries participate in the ongoing act of creation. This connection between temporal order and moral order reveals how deeply Jubilees views holiness as structural rather than emotional. It is not a feeling but a state of alignment with cosmic design. The division between Israel and the nations represents another boundary established for preservation of holiness. Israel's calling as a chosen people does not imply favoritism, but responsibility. They embody divine order in a world of confusion. Their separation through covenant ensures that knowledge of God's ways remains visible among humanity. When they maintain purity and justice, they reflect heavenly reality. When they abandon it, they blur the distinction between light and darkness. This theme gives Jubilees a strong sense of identity rooted in divine intention rather than ethnic pride. Angelic hierarchy reinforces these ideas of order. Just as creation functions through structured divisions, so does heaven. Angels serve specific purposes. Some preside over worship, others guard nations or carry prayers. None overstep their roles. Their discipline becomes a model for humanity's moral boundaries. When angels rebel, as the Watchers once did, they demonstrate what occurs when order collapses. Jubilees portrays holiness as stability and rebellion as fragmentation. Boundaries protect existence from disintegration, whether among spirits or mortals. Maintaining purity within these divisions requires constant vigilance. Jubilees frequently warns against carelessness that leads to contamination, whether through unclean food, idolatrous influence, or neglect of sacred time. Obedience preserves clarity, negligence breeds confusion. For its author, sin is not simply moral failure, but disorder intruding upon creation. Every transgression introduces chaos, reversing the separations that sustain the universe. Purity laws thus serve not as arbitrary restrictions, but as safeguards of existence itself. Understanding holiness as order transforms moral life into cosmic participation. Each person, family, and nation functions as part of a larger system designed for harmony. When humans respect boundaries, creation thrives. When they defy them, both physical and spiritual decay follow. This worldview unites ethics, worship, and cosmology in a single structure. Jubilees invites readers to perceive holiness not as isolation, but as balance, the art of living within limits that reflect divine wisdom. Through its emphasis on separation, the Book of Jubilees teaches that sanctity arises from distinction. Light shines only when divided from darkness, and good remains pure only when protected from corruption. Creation endures through boundaries, and those boundaries are sacred. To keep them is to preserve the rhythm of the cosmos. To violate them is to invite the return of chaos. Holiness, purity, and division thus become the pillars of a world sustained by divine design. Land within the Book of Jubilees carries theological weight beyond physical territory. It represents the embodiment of covenant, a visible sign of divine promise and justice. After the flood, when Noah's sons received their allotted regions, the author provides detailed boundaries marked by rivers, mountains, and seas. Each portion reflects divine fairness, ensuring that nations dwell within ordained spaces. Israel's inheritance stands apart as the spiritual center of this map, chosen not by conquest but by eternal decree. Geography becomes a mirror of moral order. To dwell within one's assigned land is to live in harmony with divine will. Descriptions of these divisions display remarkable precision, with directions and landmarks that suggest deliberate symbolism. Boundaries are not random, but correspond to moral and spiritual realities. The land promised to Abraham occupies the heart of creation, positioned between north, south, east, and west, symbolizing balance and unity. By granting this region to his descendants, God anchors holiness in the physical world. Possession of land, therefore, signifies more than ownership. It reflects participation in the unfolding plan of redemption. Every border marks a covenantal truth inscribed upon the earth. Movement of the patriarchs across these territories illustrates how geography interacts with destiny. Abraham's journeys trace the contours of the future nation's borders. Isaac and Jacob, too, move through spaces that later become tribal inheritances. Each step fulfills unseen purpose, aligning human motion with divine mapping. When Abraham builds altars, he sanctifies specific sites that will later hold historical and spiritual importance. His travels transform ordinary soil into sacred memory, ensuring that geography and covenant remain forever intertwined. Land allocation after Noah's flood carries prophetic significance. Nations that later become adversaries of Israel already occupy regions symbolizing moral opposition. Their transgressions, idolatry, violence, and injustice are tied to their geographical overreach, crossing boundaries set by divine decree. This connection between sin and geography reveals a consistent theme within Jubilees. That violation of divine limits, whether moral or territorial, brings judgment. Righteousness, on the other hand, is measured through fidelity to both ethical and spatial order. Living within appointed borders reflects submission to the Creator's structure. Possession of the promised land becomes inseparable from obedience. Jubilees warns that impurity and idolatry will lead to exile, not as punishment alone, but as the natural consequence of disorder. When moral boundaries collapse, geographical ones follow. The soil itself reacts to human behavior, either flourishing under righteousness or defiled through sin. Land and covenant share a single breath. To dishonor one is to wound the other. This idea elevates geography into moral theology, portraying creation as responsive to human faithfulness. Descriptions of Israel's inheritance also serve to affirm divine justice. God assigns lands with precision to prevent strife among nations, ensuring that each people possesses sufficient space according to its destiny. Conflict arises when humanity disregards those divisions. Jubilees attributes wars, migrations, and conquests to the violation of this heavenly cartography. Restoration of peace requires return to original boundaries established after the flood. Through this lens, history becomes a story of continual attempts to realign human habitation with divine geography. Altars built by the patriarchs mark turning points where heaven touches earth. Each altar represents renewal of covenant and consecration of land. Abraham's sacrifices in Shechem, Bethel, and Hebron sanctify the soil for future generations. Isaac's wells and Jacob's pillars continue that process, spreading holiness across the landscape. These actions transform geography into a living testimony of faith. Every sacred site carries memory of divine encounter, embedding worship within creation's physical form. Through this ritual geography, space itself becomes an instrument of revelation. The author of Jubilees also highlights prophetic foresight in these territorial narratives. When Abraham walks through the land, he does so under divine instruction to look upon what his descendants will inherit. His vision extends beyond immediate possession to the ultimate restoration of creation. Israel's land becomes the axis of history, the place where divine order manifests most clearly. All nations, whether hostile or friendly, relate to this center, either aligning with its holiness or opposing its purpose. Geography functions as moral compass for the world. This sacred mapping reinforces the unity between divine justice and human destiny. Land serves as tangible proof that the Creator governs not only spiritual matters, but physical realities. Every river, mountain, and plain participates in the covenantal narrative. Dwelling righteously within appointed space becomes an act of worship. Exile, conversely, represents dislocation from divine harmony. The boundaries drawn in Jubilees remind humanity that even geography bears witness to moral truth. Through its detailed portrayal of sacred geography, the Book of Jubilees transforms the map of the ancient world into a theological vision. Land, covenant, and holiness merge into one continuous reality. To inhabit space according to divine design is to live in peace with creation. To transgress those limits is to invite chaos. The Promised Land stands not as possession, but as symbol of alignment between heaven and earth. Within its borders, divine law takes root, and history unfolds as geography made sacred. Controversy surrounding the Book of Jubilees begins with time itself, since its 364-day solar year insists on exact weeks and fixed festival days that never drift. That precision confronts the lunar solar practice that guided temple worship and communal life during the Second Temple period, where months were observed by the moon and adjusted by priestly decision. Calendar keeping stopped being a neutral calculation and turned into a confession of faith. Choosing the solar structure endorsed by Jubilees signaled allegiance to a vision of perfection anchored in creation, while following the widely accepted system affirmed the authority of Jerusalem's leadership and an adaptable approach to sacred time. Communities that treasured Jubilees, including circles associated with Qumran, treated this calendar as a badge of purity. Festival dates, Sabbaths, and Jubilees aligned with a cosmology they believed was written on heavenly tablets, not negotiated by human councils. Observing different holy days from the temple hierarchy erected a boundary around identity. Worshippers who kept the 364-day rhythm saw themselves as guardians of an older revelation, convinced that fidelity to the true year preserved covenant integrity. Timekeeping functioned like a sanctuary in motion, carrying holiness through the weeks, even when the temple establishment charted another course. Opposition from mainstream Judaism arose not only from doctrinal disagreement, but also from pastoral necessity. Shared observances knit scattered communities together, and a unified calendar allowed pilgrims, priests, farmers, and families to meet the same convocations. Fragmentation of dates threatened cohesion. Leaders wary of sectarian fractures viewed a rival calendar as a wedge that could splinter worship, sacrifice schedules, and civic rhythms. From that perspective, Jubilees did not protect the covenant as much as it risked unraveling communal order. Rejection, then, served the goal of national stability as well as theological consistency. Debate moved quickly beyond mathematics into competing models of revelation. Jubilees frames instruction as an angelic disclosure to Moses, grounded in heavenly records that predate history. That claim elevates the solar year from preference to mandate and places human interpreters beneath a fixed cosmic decree. Rabbinic outlooks favored a living conversation with God, where sages, courts, and witnesses discerned new moons and intercalations, expressing partnership between divine guidance and human responsibility. Fixed tablets versus deliberating assemblies became a contest between absolute pattern and responsive stewardship. Early Christian readers encountered Jubilees at crossroads of identity. Themes of angels, primordial law, and carefully measured eras resonated with apocalyptic imagination, yet firm emphasis on enduring ritual observance conflicted with trajectories that emphasized faith apart from meticulous calendrical conformity. Writers who valued typology found its chronology illuminating, while others worried that its rigor could overshadow the new covenant's universality. Reception remained mixed, leaving Jubilees influential in ideas yet marginal in formal status across many churches. Preservation within the Ethiopian Orthodox tradition offered a striking counterstory. Canonical inclusion safeguarded the text in Ge'ez, allowing continuous liturgical and scholarly engagement when it faded elsewhere. Ethiopian readers encountered Abraham, Noah, and Moses within that precise architecture of time and law, not as a curiosity, but as scripture that harmonized with a rich, sacred calendar. Survival inside this tradition demonstrates how canons grow within communities whose rhythms and memories welcome a text's distinctive heartbeat. Discovery of multiple manuscripts among the Dead Sea Scrolls in the 20th century confirmed that Jubilees once held substantial authority in certain Jewish circles. Copies, citations, and thematic echoes revealed a community that built daily life around its cycles. Those caves preserved more than parchment. They preserved a worldview in which sunrise, Sabbath, and feast dates braided heaven and earth into a single cord. By contrast, absence from later rabbinic canon shows how decisively the mainstream chose flexibility over a system that allowed no human arbitration of time. Calendar conflict also exposed diverging visions of holiness. Advocates of the solar year prized symmetry that never slipped, believing that unvarying rhythm reflected the Creator's character and guarded sacred appointments from human error. Rabbinic guardians prized faithfulness expressed through witness, judgment, and communal consent, believing that obedience could adapt without betrayal. One side feared drift into impurity if days moved, the other feared rigidity that could disconnect law from lived reality. Each camp pursued reverence, yet they traveled by different clocks toward that goal. Consequences for canon formation followed naturally. Texts that stabilized common worship, supported recognized institutions, and fostered unity found a home within collections that became authoritative for the majority. Texts that fixed rival schedules or implied alternative priestly claims remained outside, regardless of their literary beauty or spiritual intensity. Jubilees paid that price. Its exactness became both its splendor and its stumbling block, winning devotion from sectarian heirs while inviting exclusion from communities that forged consensus around another reckoning of days. Legacy endures in the questions it keeps alive. How should sacred time be discerned? By unchanging pattern or by guided judgment within history? Where do heavenly decrees meet human stewardship without either swallowing the other? Jubilees answers by pointing to a calendar that claims to mirror creation's first week, while later, Judaism answers by trusting a sanctified process that gathers witnesses and wisdom. Between those answers lies the war of calendars, a struggle that shaped canons, communities, and the way generations hear the ticking of holiness through their years. Across centuries of silence and rediscovery, the Book of Jubilees continues to whisper through history, speaking to questions that still unsettle faith and scholarship alike. Its vision of divine order challenges the notion that revelation changes with generations. Instead, it portrays truth as timeless, written on heavenly tablets and reflected within the movements of stars and seasons. For modern readers, that idea remains both alluring and uncomfortable, asking whether faith is meant to evolve with culture or remain bound to an eternal rhythm established at creation. The endurance of Jubilees reveals how humanity's longing for divine structure never truly fades, even when institutions and doctrines shift. Rediscovery of the text among the Dead Sea Scrolls reignited interest in how ancient believers understood time, law, and revelation. Scholars recognized in its pages a window into a world where scripture was not a closed canon, but a living conversation. The communities that cherished Jubilees treated it as sacred memory, a restoration of what they believed had been lost. Their devotion demonstrates that faith is not only about belief, but about pattern, about aligning life with what feels cosmically right. That tension between living tradition and fixed revelation mirrors the spiritual struggles of every age, where believers seek balance between divine constancy and human experience. Its influence stretches far beyond the sects that once preserved it. Echoes of Jubilees resonate through later apocalyptic writings, shaping ideas of heavenly books, angelic hierarchies, and pre-existent law. Even the New Testament carries distant reflections of its themes: time fulfilled, divine records, and cosmic order awaiting restoration. Each echo reminds readers that spiritual imagination in the ancient world was vast, and boundaries between scripture and revelation were fluid. The survival of those ideas into later faiths proves that its vision left deep marks on the theological landscape, even after its name disappeared from common worship. The moral universe presented in Jubilees continues to fascinate because it links ethics to creation's architecture. Holiness is not arbitrary, it is the alignment of human life with the structure of reality itself. Modern readers, confronting a fragmented world, often feel that longing for order. Through its precise timelines and unwavering symmetry, the book offers an image of existence where every act carries meaning and every season reflects divine intention. That vision comforts those who yearn for stability and unsettles those who prefer fluidity. Yet it speaks powerfully to the enduring desire for coherence between heaven and earth. Ongoing study of Jubilees challenges assumptions about Scripture's formation. Its presence among the Dead Sea Scrolls shows that the line between canonical and non-canonical was once far more permeable than later generations assumed. Communities shaped their sacred collections based on what resonated with their understanding of divine truth. That reality complicates modern notions of authority, reminding readers that faith traditions evolve not through certainty alone, but through dialogue, disagreement, and rediscovery. Jubilees stands as evidence of how revelation can endure outside official boundaries, waiting to be heard again when the time feels right. Its message also invites reflection on the relationship between law and grace. By asserting that divine commandments existed from creation, the book erases the divide between moral duty and spiritual freedom. It proposes that obedience is not submission, but participation in the order that sustains life. For believers who see chaos in modern times, this idea holds enduring relevance. Law and grace become two expressions of the same divine intention, to keep creation balanced and humanity connected to its source. That insight, drawn from ancient pages, continues to inspire those seeking harmony in faith and reason. Across generations, fascination with Jubilees persists not only because of its theology, but because of its humanity. It portrays patriarchs, angels, and nations within a network of divine care, emphasizing that history is purposeful even when painful. Readers encounter a God who governs with justice, yet invites partnership through obedience. That portrayal gives dignity to time itself. Every sunrise becomes a reminder that the Creator's rhythm still beats beneath the surface of human history. Its vision remains relevant because it transforms ordinary existence into a sacred calendar where every moment carries spiritual consequence. Modern audiences rediscovering Jubilees often feel they are hearing an ancient song still vibrating beneath the noise of centuries. It speaks to the unchanging human desire to locate meaning within time's relentless flow. Whether one views it as inspired revelation, historical curiosity, or poetic theology, it cannot be dismissed as irrelevant. Its pages echo with the conviction that the divine order still governs creation, that light and darkness remain distinct, and that sacred time continues to unfold toward restoration. Those echoes remind humanity that revelation never truly ends. It lingers wherever hearts remain open to listen. The enduring power of the Book of Jubilees lies in its invitation to remember, a call to look backward not for nostalgia but for clarity. By returning to the structure written at the beginning, it encourages readers to rediscover purpose amid confusion. It tells humanity that every generation stands within the same cycle of covenant, choice, and renewal. Whether through festivals or faith, discipline or devotion, the path toward divine harmony remains open. Its vision of ordered creation continues to guide those who seek peace within the complexity of modern life, offering reassurance that beneath the shifting tides of history, divine rhythm still holds the world together. If this exploration of the Book of Jubilees brought new understanding or inspiration to you, take a moment to share that discovery. Subscribe to the channel so you won't miss future journeys through hidden texts and timeless wisdom. Like this video to help others find it, and write a comment sharing what part of Jubilees intrigued or challenged you the most. Finally, share this film with family and friends who love history, faith, and the mysteries of Scripture, so that more hearts can rediscover the forgotten rhythm of sacred time together.